Regarding your question about Peter Schiff's recommendation to invest in China and how he feels that the Chinese economy, even though it will be temporarily and somewhat affected by a collapse in the U.S. economy, it'll it would still represent an investment opportunity. And the reason for that, I feel like in your video, you talk a little bit about money supply and monetary policy, but not as much. And I feel that's key to the reason why Peter Schiff feels that the Chinese economy will come out on top after all this is all of the adjustments are over with. And the reason is that the U.S. Consumer is not going to stop consuming only because it doesn't want to anymore, like, oh, I'm just not going to buy from the Chinese anymore. The reason they're going to stop buying from the Chinese is going to be because of a devaluation of the dollar and them not simply being priced out of the market, them not being able to afford Chinese goods anymore because they're not going to look as cheap as they do now. And in turn, this devaluation of the dollar, depreciation of the dollar is going to be balanced by an appreciation in the Chinese currency. This would allow Chinese people to consume their own goods. And you're right in the sense that a lot of the Chinese economy is focused on exports. But I think Peter Schiff would argue that it's much easier to adjust what you're manufacturing once you have the capital, factories, and everything in place. It's much more easier to go from manufacturing a given thing and switch to and manufacture something else that will be more focused on domestic consumption. And an example that I've heard him cite is that of World War II, where during World War II, a lot of U.S. factories were being used to produce weapons, and after the World War II was over, these factories adjusted and started, instead of producing weapons and military equipment, they switched to producing consumer goods. So this is a precedent of where it's much more easier it's going to be much more easier for the Chinese to adjust to this change in the global economy, and in doing this with an appreciated currency at the same time. So I think that's why, and I think he would also say, I mean, it's not like investing in any Chinese company is a good idea. I mean, you have to look at the company, you have to look where their customers are, and I think I've heard him recommend investing in Chinese companies that aren't as exposed to the U.S. Obviously, most all of them are going to have a big U.S. exposure, but that have that export to other countries and maybe have are more focused on domestic consumption, or that's sort of like you gotta look at each on a case by case basis, and you have to analyze each company. But the assumption that you have to have when you are selecting or evaluating what company you're going to invest is first that the U.S. consumer is going to lose purchasing power, so you have to have that in mind more than other countries probably, and that the Chinese consumer is gonna its purchasing power is going to increase. So based on these two assumptions, Chinese purchasing power is going to increase and U.S. or Americans purchasing power is going to decrease. Based on this, then you select what company you want to invest in. Maybe there's companies that are going to be totally affected by the U.S. not being able to buy products from them. Maybe it's a product that it's very, very specific to American consumers. But maybe there's other products that once Americans aren't buying it anymore, it's going to be easy to just switch and sell it to on a domestic market. So, I mean, you have to look on a case-by-case basis, and I don't think Schiff would say invest in any Chinese company as long as it's a Chinese company, just invest in it. Obviously not. You have to look at it on an individual basis as far as investing in China is concerned. And as far as the Chinese overall economy, I think that is his main argument, that the Chinese are going to gain purchasing power and that the Americans are going to lose purchasing power. And for this reason is that they'll be able to survive without the U.S., which they've been, in a way, subsidizing, whose consumption they've been subsidizing somewhat. So even though in its beginnings, when the Chinese economy started to develop, it did depend on the U.S. maybe for investment and capital. It's come to a point now where the Chinese might be able to, I mean, they've acquired so much capital, so much wealth, factories, that they might be able to do without the U.S. since their economy has developed and taken off. Then that's it.